pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty. Okay, Ms. Martinez, we're going to have a roll call. Everybody, please start. Okay, we're missing, there we go. Ms. Martinez?
Okay. All counselors present and Counselor Carson previously requested to be excused.
Okay, thank you. Next item, we have the agenda approval, but before we have the agenda approval tonight, our city manager, Heather Brooks, is attending by Zoom. So Ms. Brooks, I believe you and I talked about moving an item up on the agenda.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I would recommend from a attendance from the public perspective that following the presentation of the library board, we would move number 4A, which is under the city manager legal, related to the discussion of the district attorney. I would recommend that we move that to follow the presentation of the library board.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brooks. Council?
Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Please start voting. Ms. Martinez?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Up next on the agenda, we have citizen comments. I'm so glad to see the community show up tonight. And during this part of the agenda, we allow all the people who would like to make comments to come up to the podium and you make your comments. We do ask that you keep your comments to within 3 minutes. We keep a clock right there. If you're still talking at the 3-minute mark, I will politely ask you to end the conversation at that time so the next person could get their comments put in, okay? Tonight, we have several comment cards. And here in Alamosa at our city council, we do our best to make sure that everyone get a chance to make their comments. But I also want to let you know that we don't go back and forth answering questions. So when you throw questions out, our legal counsel and our city manager may write notes down and then respond to those questions at a later time. But city council will not respond to any of your questions that you present to us while you're up here, okay? So make sure that you, we just ask that you stick to your 3-minute time, and then that allow for everyone tonight to have an opportunity to say what they would like to say, okay? All right, so I have a stack of cards right here, and I'll start off with the first person that I have on the stack. His name is David Teen.
My name is David Teen. My wife and Wendy and I live on El Rio Drive, and I just wanted to share some of the problems we have over there because of the lack of action by the DA. I know how you guys probably all start your mornings, have a cup of coffee, read the paper, whatever. Our mornings start by walking out in our driveway, seeing if there's a car parked in our driveway, if they're shooting up, parked illegally, whatever. Then we wait for them to leave. Then we go out with a trash sack and we pick up dirty underwear, dirty clothes, hypodermic needles, all kinds of human waste. There's stuff out there, I don't even know what it is. We do this 7 days a week and we're tired of it. And we'd like to have you guys help and let's get this guy straightened up and get him out of here. Because these guys have been arrested 3 times. They're back before the policemen are rolling up the crime scene tape. And it's not fair that we live in a neighborhood like that. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Larry Brown.
Thank you, and I'm here. I live in the county, Alamosa County. We have a couple of properties on 711 State Avenue and 607 and 609 8th Street. And basically similar comments. We've certainly had at our store, we've certainly had our share of crime and break-ins and theft and that sort of thing. Like the previous speaker, not as bad right this moment, but plenty of times we have to go around, pick up hypodermic needles, clean up human waste and that sort of thing. So I guess the way that I will say it is that I support our police and our police chief and whatever their stance is on what we do with the DA question so that we can get this crime under control. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Jake Burris.
Thank you very much, and thank you guys for your time and efforts and spending your evening here. I know it's a lot to ask, tough job. My name is Jake Burris, live here in town. I have 4 children, wife and 4 children here in the school district. Been a lot of rumblings lately about our district attorney and throughout the community. There's been a lot of frustration, I think, amongst our police force, judges, and throughout the general community. And one thing I'll say is when I started paying more attention and doing my homework, one thing I realized and I think needs to be said, and there's a lot of representation of the Valley law enforcement in here I see, but given the efforts and commitment that specifically Chief Anderson and the Alamosa PD have put in the last years, I think they deserve a round of applause. Thank you guys, all of you, for continuing to do your job and protect us and uphold the law. I will say I find it absolutely absurd. I'm under the impression that there were over 40 operations in the last year conducted by Alamosa PD, I'm sure along with other agencies. And of those 40 operations, not a single one went to trial. It sounds like they were all plea bargained down to a slap on the hand, I guess I'll say. First, my big concern is that when you have a police force like we do that is committed, is doing a good job, trying to keep our community safe, if things like this continue because of negligence by elected officials, those police officers will not stick around. There's no reason for them to risk their lives and try to do what they think is right if we're not going to back them up by laying out the correct consequences associated with whatever the criminal has done to break the law. Obviously, this compromises the safety of our community, and I think that we need to stand up and hold our elected and appointed officials accountable. And I am here tonight to ask this board to take any effort or power it may have to pursue the recall efforts of Alonzo Payne and take a leadership role. And I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Ruthie Brown.
Good evening. I have to second what Jake says. Alamosa, we need to step up and not just do it on behalf of Alamosa City, but we need to get every city in the valley to support this recall. I've read a lot of the stories from the victims and what have you, and I commend Terry. I don't know who's all pushed it as much as Terry, but I know she's held meeting after meeting after meeting when 2 people showed up and 1 person showed up and no one showed up. And she didn't give up. Because when you talk to these victims and the victims' families, it's heart-wrenching. And it's got to stop. We can't have a safe community without it. I see Sheriff Jackson and Dingfelder over from Monte Vista. What a great job those guys are also doing. But we need to get the drugs. We need to get the robbery stop, the criminals out of town and hold them responsible because we're all good people. We deserve better. It's the shortest I've ever talked, but whatever Kenny wants, give it to him. You know, he's our chief. He's done a great job. His guys do a great job. Show the support. Don't be afraid. Call every other city in the valley. And of course, I'm going to end with something, but the folks down at Alamosa Home, they deserve an award. They deserve a big award because they got the snow off their curb, the snow and ice from in front of their building on both sides, so it's safer for their customers to get out. I haven't noticed that anyplace else, but they sure need a thank you.
Thank you. Heidi Richardson.
Hi, my name is Heidi Richardson. I live over on the east side. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Alamosa PD for all that they're doing to try and keep our city safe. I can't imagine how frustrating it has to be to work your butt off on some of these cases. And before you even get your paperwork done, the criminals are back out on the street. So I think it's pretty self-explanatory what you guys need to do. We need all the help we can get to get this changed. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty Hussman.
My name is Marty Hussman, born and raised in the Valley, been in Alamosa my whole life. I live out in the county, so I'm not a member of the actual city, but I do own a business in the city. And I'm going to be kind of an echo chamber, I guess, of what everybody here is kind of here about. One suggestion that I can think of that hasn't been mentioned yet on the crime rate, there are at least 2 houses that I know of that have been raided multiple times. One over on the Vita that's been raided 5 times, one over on, I believe it's 9th Street or somewhere near there. My son lives over there, but it's been raided at least 4 times. Now I know the city council has taken up the agenda of the VRBOs and the vacation rentals, and they've gone after those landlords on being able to control what they do with their rent. When can the city council do something about these landlords that continue renting their houses out to the drug dealers? You know, these cops keep going in there and they've busted these guys numerous times. And I know who some of these drug dealers are. I've been in that circle. I know I've had friends that died from drug overdoses, so I know who the people are. And I think at some point, city council needs to go after the owners of these properties that are actually continuing the problem by renting out to the same people. So, and everything else I was ready to say, I'm sure is going to be echoed over and over again about the crime rate, about the homeless coming here and increasing the crime rate, about the hypodermic needles in the parking lots. I mean, the auto shop where we take our trucks to get their oil change, hypodermic needles there all the time. I mean, so it's spread out through the entire town. So whether it's the homeless that's bringing this in, or it's the crime rate that's already here, or the criminals that are already here, the cops are doing their due diligence. And I know a couple of them personally. And when you hear about the hard work that they do and the frustration that's in their voices because they're working their asses off to get these people off the street, and then nothing happens. Like I think Burris mentioned that there were 40 drug busts in the last 9 months and not one prosecution. We have a guy down on State and Main Street that shoots somebody in the back of their head and he gets 13 years for attempted murder. If the guy dies, that's murder in my eyes, and 13 years is not justice for our community. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you so very much. Thank you. George Wilkerson.
Thank you for your time. I have the house right in between two of these houses that we're complaining about tonight. They come up in the front yard and they'll strip off right there in my front of my daughter's house, change their clothes and all this stuff right in her front yard. We got a 12-year-old grandson that's right there, he can't believe it either. And something needs to be done. The police have done their job, but they get them to where it goes to the DA and then it's pled down and these guys are back in business that night after they've been arrested that morning. And it's not just in Alamosa, it's all over the 12th Judicial District. And whether you're a state patrol or a county sheriff or whatever, they're dealing with this problem, I think, all in our valley here. And I think it needs to be stopped. And I don't know what we need to do with it, but we're here to support you guys and whatever it takes to get this accomplished. And my daughter has a hard time sleeping at night because they operate all night long. Doors slamming, radios blasting, mufflers that they, should have been given a citation years ago. They used to stop me every night when I went home and had told me change my mufflers, and I thought they sounded good. They were just glass backs, but this is what we're containing with right now in this area. And I think we have it in almost every block in Alamosa, because I got the same group that goes over there by my daughter's house. I own the house, but they frequent there. They come over to my alley over there between Bell and Ross, and they go down the alley there, and there's another house right in there that it's the same clientele. It's visited in both of them. And here we are, and something needs to be done where they're taken care of and getting them off the street, and our homeless, they push our carts up there with all their stuff on them. And they go in after they've haven't handled out there on the curb all day, got enough money to buy something. They go over there and they're there every night. They're selling. So, but we appreciate what you do. And we really appreciate what the police have done because they've been there a dozen times this year and nothing's been accomplished on account of the DA turning them loose. So we're behind you guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Jennifer Carr.
Of course, I'm here to talk about the DA. I brought 2 pictures of victims that are waiting for their cases to be prosecuted by the DA. I'm gonna cry, sorry. My nephew, Jaden Cruz, was beat up at a football game in October and no charges were pressed until after he died in January when his family had to go to the DA's office and force that man to charge those children. He's not here anymore because his mom, part of the reason, was murdered and her case has still not gone to trial. The man who murdered her runs free in our community, although he's on parole and has violated it. This man needs to be recalled and we need your support.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Laney Welch. Laney, okay.
Hi, my name is Lonnie Welch. I was a victim of a violent crime in Alamosa County. I am one of the 9 victims that are included in the pattern and practice complaint filed by the Rocky Mountain Victim Law Center and one of the now 8 VRA complaints being sent over to the Attorney General and the victim who started the Recall Pain campaign. I will not go into the details of my case as they are well documented. I have brought copies of some of the documents concerning my cases should anybody want to review them. It only took me 2 interactions with DA Payne for me to realize that the victims and the citizens of the Valley were in trouble. Within weeks of my offender being arrested, I had reached out to the Rocky Mountain Victim Law Center, state legislators, and the governor over my experiences with DA Payne and my concerns for victims of the Valley. Over the past year, I've not only faced the challenges of my own cases, but have tried to support victims with resources and helping them to have their voices heard. It is important for victims of crimes to feel heard, and they were not getting that from DA Payne. Instead, victims are being re-victimized and fear retaliation by DA Payne if they choose to speak out or fight for justice in their cases. The fear of retaliation is justified, as shown in my case, where after reaching out to the Rocky Mountain Victim Law Center, DA Payne removed a signed plea agreement for assault 3 in my case and replaced it with a plea of telephone intimidation, which was not a crime that had occurred. DA Payne has shown no respect for the victims of crimes, law enforcement, the laws set forth in our state, nor the judicial system as a whole. DA Payne is putting the citizens and law enforcement of our valley in further danger by his lack of respect for the office that he holds. I want to thank you for taking the time to help the victims of crimes in the valley to be heard and acknowledging the seriousness of the matter and for taking the steps to save our valley from Alonzo Payne.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe it's Wade Price.
Hi, I'm Wade Price, live in the county, but we have 2 businesses here in town. We've been hit with, theft and everything else. I just want to lend my support to the police force and say that we need to recall this guy and get somebody tough. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Terry Hammond.
Hello, my name is Terry Hammond and I live in Moscow. Some of you here know me and know that I can be a little outspoken at times. Lonnie Welch is my daughter and I run the Recall Payne Facebook page. After my daughter's initial experiences with Alonzo Payne, she asked, how could someone like him be in that office and wasn't there something we could do about it? That was the beginning of the recall effort. We knew that Payne's treatment of her couldn't be an isolated incident. So we, mainly Lonnie, started some investigating on our own. We found that there were many more crime victims who were also being treated more like criminals. When I first made the recall effort public, there were many who thought I was doing this as a personal vendetta because of my daughter. I hope now, for the sake of all the victims involved, that they realize that this is most certainly not the case. Some said I needed to tone it down and not take it so personally. But anyone who cares about the people of this valley and the quality of life in this valley should take it personally. Any one of you could become a victim of crime at any time. There were times that I became discouraged and I wanted to quit. But then I thought about all the victims that would be terrorized by this man in the future, and I had to keep working at it. Our motto for the recall is a fight for justice and victims' rights. Justice is certainly not being served by the plea deals that Payne offers. He has come to be known by many as let him go Alonzo. And when these criminals are put back out on the streets of the valley, it is a matter of public safety. These people are free to keep victimizing our law-abiding citizens. Word gets around and we have criminals flocking into this valley. These are the 2 issues that have fueled this recall effort, but by far, Payne's total disregard for the victims of violent crime is the most important. That is why he must be removed from office, and after that, he needs to be prosecuted. He has violated Colorado statutes and has caused harm to many people. He is a criminal. We will be having a recall meeting this Saturday at Society Hall from 5 to 7 p.m. Anyone is welcome to attend. If anyone has any questions, I can be contacted at recallpayne@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. John Lumen.
My name is John Lumen. I am victim zero. Basically, I first had an encounter with Payne's office after my rights had been systematically denied to me by both former Deputy Wayne Clark, I'm from Saguache County, and also former DA Willett, who broke the law repeatedly, and I contacted the VRA for him. And due to their 6-month investigation process, he would have been out of office before they could have completed an investigation. That's how I was able to get a complaint in by February. My first contact with Alonzo Payne's so-called victims advocate, she assured me that Payne had cleared house of all the former victims advocates and everybody else that I had had complaints with. Ellen Cox, victim advocate for Sheriff Dan in Saguache's office, informed me that Victoria Chavez was still leading the victims program. And my victims advocate had lied to me right off the bat when contacting me. This then went on to having ADA Raines go in front of a judge at a hearing that I had been notified, but not notified had been scheduled. The hearing date was left blank on the notification I got from the court. He then went in and argued to dismiss the case, claiming that there was no evidence that me and my former lover had been in a relationship. That led to complaint with the Attorney Regulation Council 22-79, which was handed to him on the 22nd of February. I believe that's about the day that he either resigned or was fired. 22-80 is dealing with how Payne handled the case. This is much bigger than just Payne. I fully congratulate you for taking action against Payne. He is a criminal and should be in prison. This is more than just a recall, but it's much bigger than Payne. Something else is going on here that has spanned 2 DA's administrations. And any proper investigation really needs to look into that. Again, I had very little contact with Payne's office, but that led to the first VRA complaint to get as far as it did. So I can document all this and have kept records of all of it if your staff wishes to investigate outside the county, because needless to say, Saguache does not have enough people to have the resources. So, but thank you, and please get this out to every other town and every other county official once you, I hope, go through with this. My time's up.
Thank you. Thank you. We only have a couple more, but I want to commend the audience for keeping your comments within the 3 minutes. You all are doing amazing, and thank you for allowing people to make their comments, okay? Appreciate that. Aaron Mittenberger.
Thanks, Council. My name is Aaron Miltenberger. I live at 8125 South River Road. I'm coming to you today as a father, as a community member, and as somebody who's worked with young people for nearly 3 decades. We have a problem in our community, and that problem really boils down to a lack of accountability. While you won't see me in the Yellow Shirt Brigade, I do believe that we need to address that problem. I'm a firm believer in second chances. I'm a firm believer in restorative practices. I'm a firm believer in making things right. And that's the foundation of our justice system. But there's also a difference between hurt and harm. And if there's somebody who is causing harm intentionally and repeatedly, our community should not be having to live with this person on our streets. We have a government and law enforcement officers that are supposed to be modeling community good. And in many ways, the law officers that are here tonight, Mr. Dingfelder, Kinney, Sheriff Jackson, are doing exactly that. I've spent a long time in that field myself. I worked for wilderness therapy programs, which are diversion programs for young people. I was a youth corrections officer down in Phoenix, Arizona. I worked in youth development for over 25 years. And most importantly, I'm a father. And I can't look my kids in the eye and tell them that I need to hold them accountable if our society won't do the same thing to people who not just are experiencing homelessness, fall on some hard times, or experiencing some sort of addiction, but are murderers, are rapists, are doing real harm in our community and are still living free with no accountability. What we ask those people to do is acknowledge the hurt that they've done and work to repair that harm. What we're asking all of our community to do is that exact same thing, whether it be criminals or our district attorney. I'm asking this city council to ask our district attorney to acknowledge the hurt that he and his office have done and work to repair that harm. I come here tonight in full support of our law enforcement and our law enforcement officers. I also ask the council to address the malfeasance and support that letter to the state attorney general. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And Matt Abbey.
Hello, come in. I have lived in 4 cities, Seattle and the city proper, where I grew up and went to school right downtown. The Seattle I grew up in didn't have a need for locked car or house doors, but Seattle got permissive, and the result of no consequence management are on the evening news. The standard of civil behavior there has been allowed to erode, largely by their city council. I lived in Bremerton, Washington after Tammy and I got married, downtown, west side, 5 blocks from Puget Sound Naval Shipyard with its half a dozen aircraft carriers. Neither the MPs nor the city of Bremerton allowed the level of garbage to continue that we allow here. We lived in Anchorage, Alaska. That state has social service issues in the cities and in the villages that make the valley's problems pale in comparison. So I have some outside experience for comparison. I have seen what communities permit and the long-term consequences of their action or inaction. I believe our community may not fully grasp how much time is wasted and how much harm is done and stress is caused by local criminal BS. Because we are socialized to it. We think it's normal, but it's not. We all know a family who probably have rules, but no consequences are enforced for bad behavior. Those conditions attract similar kids who are looking for trouble or who seek a permissive environment. That's the house that gets torn up by a party, but nobody gets grounded. That's the house where the nice cars get wrecked. That's the house that looks good or is improving like ours is, but because the parenting is weak by way of little or no consequences. Our hassles and nuisances are the result of lack of consequences. So let's talk about parenting and consequences for a second. You see, there are deep parallels between a poorly parented household and a town with rules but no consequences for bad behavior. The signs are all there. I chain the dumpsters in the alley behind my business to try and manage the nuisance and messes to prevent the next dumpster fire by my building. If I forget to lock it, the chain gets stolen. Petty thieves are hitting our stores, Walmart, Hobbytown, Christie Mountain, Green Spot, and others on a regular basis. I care if our Walmart gets stolen from. It's the canary in our coal mine. Our canary's dead. People randomly driving around shooting out car windows so brazenly that they must have thought that mom and dad didn't care. Graffiti up and down the alleyway at my house. My home got tagged along with Ephraim Ortiz's, Jeff Owsley's, and a couple other neighbors. I looked north to Shirley Burvig's and south to the space where the judge's shed got torched. Ours is a good street in any other city. The Valley, because of the permissive allowances of the DA's office, is the most thieving, nuisance-filled city I've lived in. My dad had a sign over his desk, a Seattle police officer for 25 years. His leadership motto was a version of Lee Iacocca's, and it's my challenge to you. Do something. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. The DA's office is the Valley's #1 issue. This is the long game, and it will be a test of your leadership, resolve, and character. The council and the local law enforcement agencies have my support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Right in time, man. Thank you. Okay, so those are all the comments. We want to thank you. We still have, okay, we have this one more. If you could bring it up, usually we don't accept comment cards after we shut it off, but we're gonna go ahead since we saw you standing up back there. Thank you so much. Okay, it's no worries. It's okay. No
And Mayor,
worries.
after this one, don't forget to allow Zoom attendees to speak.
Oh, yes. Okay, I will. And thank you so much for driving all the way from San Luis. And
Well, yeah, I'm pretty upset with the law enforcement and the DA. I had a friend that got shot last year in my house on February 4th of last year. Today, I had court, and that's kind of why I'm late, but he dismissed the case on a murder charge. My friend got shot in the back, right in my kitchen. And they try to tell me I'm not a victim, I'm a witness. That's what Alex Raines told me first. Then Alonso Payne comes and tells me the same thing. And today he moved to dismiss. In 2 weeks, they're gonna throw the case out. This guy's trying to kill me, but instead he got my friend. And now they're gonna throw it out, and this guy's gonna walk the street after he let him out on a $10,000 bond, $1 million bond on a murder charge. Where in the state of Colorado have you ever seen somebody get a case thrown down to $10,000 on a murder charge? That's really why I came, because I'm very upset. And I'm very upset with what happened today. And I knew you guys were having this meeting, so I decided to come and let the people know that about what's happening, because it's not fair. You know, I could see if he didn't do it, but he did do it, and now he's gonna walk free, you know, and they're laughing at me. But I don't even know what to do. He hadn't even sent a victim's advocate to come and talk to me since this happened a year ago. You know, I've never talked to one person, never went to my house, never talked to the other guy that was in the house with me, they never questioned nothing. So, you know, that's all I gotta say is, you know, but I think what he's doing is wrong, and there needs to be some change. That's it. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so since we've gone through the comment cards that we have here, next, since we are having a hybrid meeting, we're going to go to Zoom and allow the participants on Zoom to make their comments. And for those of you who are on Zoom, you probably can't see the clock, but once it strikes the 3-minute mark, I will politely ask you to end your comments at that particular time. Ms. Martinez, will you please give the instructions to the people who are on Zoom of how to raise their hand and be recognized?
Yes, sir. So if you're on the Zoom app and you want to speak right now, you'll use the raise your hand feature in the bottom of the screen. If you're on a telephone, in order to raise your hand, you'll dial *9. Looks like I'm seeing one hand raised.
Okay. So far, next in line, we have A. Wilkinson. There you go.
Hello, how is everybody tonight?
Great, thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. On 3/26/22, it'll be 2 years to the day that the drug activity started taking place at 10 La Vida. The activity and individuals have since been seen going in and out and staying in 20 La Vida as well. We greatly appreciate the efforts of Chief Anderson and Detective Birch and the other law enforcement officers and the job that they've done to try to take care of this drug problem. They've performed numerous operations at 10 La Vida where the homeowner ended up with numerous felony warrants. There have been other individuals with warrants out of this location, and these individuals have evaded warrants, skipped out on bond, and then they're released, and the drug activity continues. And it's continuing to this day. The occupants are still in the house. The filth and the drug activity is still going on, and the neighborhood is unsafe due to the clientele that's going in and out of this house, and the law-abiding residents are having to put up with this. If Alonzo Payne had done his job when these individuals have shown up for court, the problem may have improved. I'm sincerely asking you to get rid of Payne and to get rid of the drug activity in this town and in these locations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And ma'am, I didn't catch your name. Can you say your name for me?
Amanda Wilkinson.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, up next, we have Vanessa Romero.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
So I am a victim or I'm classified a victim in a case of domestic violence regarding my now ex-husband. And throughout this whole case, I would argue that the trauma of dealing with the district attorney's office has been far more traumatizing, or almost as traumatizing as the actual crime. It's unacceptable, and I myself, I am tired of it. I can no longer stay quiet, and that's why I am here. Under the Colorado Victim Rights Act, victims are ensured that, we are ensured these rights to be treated with fairness, respect, dignity, and that we are free from intimidation, harassment, and abuse. How does that make sense when we're being intimidated, harassed, emotionally and verbally abused by this district attorney, Alonzo Payne? We need to get him out of here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next hand that I see raised doesn't have your name, but it says Sunstone. I think Sunstone, there you go. If you could state your name.
My name is Jennifer Kelleher.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Go ahead.
Thank you. The district attorney's office in the 12th Judicial District where we live, the DA Payne, his deputy DA that was just fired, Raines, they are inadequate, inexperienced, don't want to do their job. I have two ongoing cases. One is my young grandchild who just took his life in December, who was assaulted by 5 boys on October 1st of last year. The DA was supposed to press charges against those boys, and those charges sat on his desk until I yelled and screamed to have a meeting with him on January 11th. When I went in on January 11th, the charges were filed that day. Up until that day, they had done nothing. Not to mention my daughter's case, Jacqueline Jones, who was murdered in Monte Vista in 2014. We just now, thank God, have a district attorney who has appointed someone from her office in Jefferson County who will be coming down to handle my daughter's case, because this DA's office is not responsible or, just to be blunt, educated enough to do their jobs or to even want to do their jobs. As I've heard other people say, the way they treat victims is disgusting. I have been hung up on, I have been yelled at, I have been belittled, not just myself, but also my family. And I just lost a child indirectly because of his fear of what these boys were going to retaliate against him. And the DA's office did nothing. They could have charged those boys immediately. And it goes deeper than just the DA's office, but tonight we're talking about the DA's office, so that's where we are. I appreciate the law enforcement. I think they're doing a great job, and the DA does not have their back. They arrest these people over and over and over again, and then they're released, and it just starts again. It's appalling, and something needs to be done because our city is just turning into filth. It's bad.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Up next, we have Rosalie and Leroy Martinez. I think you're muted right now. If you could just unmute. There you go. We can hear you.
Now, well, maybe it was better if you didn't hear me.
But anyway, Sheriff Jackson and the chief, they've done everything in their power that they can do. I know the times that we've called them for our businesses and stuff, they were right there, right quick, and they handled every situation that as quickly as they could. And they're doing everything they can. Now, as far as the district attorney is concerned, I don't know how you fix this problem because I don't have enough knowledge as to how this thing works politically, but I would imagine that there's got to be somebody up above him that can reprimand him in some form, because as far as recalling them, that would take a long time. And I don't know how easy or how hard that would be. It would be very difficult, seems like to me, but I don't know. But I know the city, the police department and the sheriff's department, they've done their job. They've done what they can. And it's very frustrating when you can't get anything accomplished that you want to set out to accomplish. But anyway, that's about all I've got to say there. They're doing their job.
And I think what we're asking is that you do whatever you can in your power to make it easier for them to do their jobs, because they do work hard, and it's very disheartening when you don't see any good result out of all the hard work that they do. So we totally support them and the whole police force.
They don't have a backup because of the DA.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to fix it, so.
We'll leave that up to you. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your comments, and we'll be having further discussions about this after the citizen comments and after we move a little bit further down the agenda. Okay, do we have anyone else in the Zoom audience who would like to raise your hand at this time before we close this segment of the agenda? This is your final call to raise your hand and be acknowledged and allowed to make your comments. After we close this segment, we will not be going back to citizen comments. So please raise your hands now so that we can recognize you and give you an opportunity to speak. Okay, is it Yvette? Yvette, you're next. Yvette?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Yvette Atencio, and I work for Two Casa Inc. here in Alamosa, and we serve all 6 counties of the San Luis Valley. So I just wanted to kind of share how disheartening it is working with survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault when they're having their cases dismissed. And it's hard to kind of try and support and encourage them to come forward, first of all, to tell their story, and then having to go through the court process is even more difficult for them. And so when their cases are being dismissed or being treated, and this is, of course, just, what we hear from clients, not all clients, but some, when they're upset or they get re-traumatized, we're there to pick up the pieces and kind of try to hold them up and support them and continuing to make their voices heard. So I just wanted to let you all know that we also get the fallback of everything else that's going on. And just as a community member, as an agency in the Valley, I just want to let everybody know that we stand with all of our clients and the community members and are here to support you. And we just hope that people aren't discouraged or afraid to come forward and seek help. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Up next, we have Rachel Baird. You're still muted. So Rachel, you're next, but you're muted. So Rachel, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the next person and we'll come back to you. Up next is Teresa Ortega.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Teresa.
Okay, so my name is Teresa Ortega. I am the executive director at Tu Casa Inc. here in Alamosa. We have the Children's Advocacy Center program as well under our umbrella. And I just want to support my coworker, Eva Atento, in voicing that we are wanting to support the people that we exist to serve. We serve people who have been victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, child sexual abuse, stalking, and human trafficking. And unfortunately, we also, well, no, not unfortunately, forgive my word on that. We also work with community partners such as law enforcement, the Department of Social Services, the District Attorney's Office. So this is a really complicated place that our agency finds itself in. But at the end of the day, we do stand by the people that we serve, which are those people who've experienced the victimizations that I listed off. And we have witnessed firsthand the impact of just the lack of action on the DA's part, and at times lack of preparation or understanding of how to be victim centered and trauma informed. And I never thought that we'd actually be in a position where we would have to say something, because again, we'd rather support and work with our partners within the community so that we can continue to ensure that anybody who lives in our communities gets to live a healthy, safe life, free of fear and free of violence or abuse, regardless if it's physical or emotional. So again, as much as it pains me to speak up against the district attorney's office, it's not anything personal. It's the fact that I live in Alamosa County. I have 2 little girls. I have a husband who's an officer for law enforcement in Monte Vista PD. I have a lot of friends in law enforcement, and I know how hard they work each and every day. That I'm speaking up today, and I'm speaking up for my staff and especially for those we serve. Please, I support you fully in whatever steps need to be taken to address the situation we're in.
Okay. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you very much. Up next, we have Delzia Worley.
Good evening, Council. I would just like to echo some of the comments that have been made. I appreciate you, as always, taking time to listen to the concerns of the community and us as citizens. On behalf of, myself and my employer, we really appreciate the hard work that the cops do in our community. As most everyone is aware, the bank unfortunately had a robbery, and the cops were there literally within minutes and kept our people safe, and had the suspect under arrest by the end of the day. And that meant a great deal to myself and our employees. But on the flip side, the frustration that must exist not only to victims in our community, but also to our officers when the DA's office does not act on their hard work. And so, I appreciate you listening to our concerns, and hopefully something can be done, but just really very thankful for our law enforcement and for the things they take seriously, even when they can't always get the charges through and are not able to get these charges through. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Ms. Martinez, I know we told Rachel we would give her another opportunity. Do you see if her hand is raised somewhere else?
I think she just accidentally raised her hand.
Oh, she
That's
accidentally-
Rachel from the city.
Right, I understand. Thank you. Just wanted to give her opportunity to speak too. All right, okay. So we don't see any other hands raised on Zoom. So this is the time when we turn everything back over to our city manager and our city attorney for any follow-up comments. I'll turn it back over to you, Ms. Brooks, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, we do have an agenda item that we will be bringing up right after the presentation by the library board. The Chief Anderson and myself will spend some time on this topic. There was one comment made, though, that doesn't 100% fit into what we planned on covering, so I wanted to address that right now. There was a comment in regards to some of the recent conversations we've had regarding short-term rentals, and maybe that we're controlling what their rates are going to be or some things like that. That has not been a part of our discussion. The discussion's been more on, should we have any regulations of how many do we have, where they're located, if there's safety requirements, those types of things. And those are still ongoing. So I just want to make sure that's clear. But then it was being brought up as far as prompting us to do something related to these homes that we are seeing a lot of the crimes occur and over. And so to that point, I just wanted to share when council addressed that through the ordinance related to nuisance properties, which now allows the police chief to, if certain criteria are met, that he could refer the matter through municipal court. If the prosecutor agrees and the judge agrees, those properties could be shuttered for up to a year, depending on what the situation is. And so I do want to make sure that I point that out, because that's not something we were planning to mention during our presentation on the district attorney concerns. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Brooks, and I'm very glad you covered that, because I wanted everyone to know that we are doing something about the houses where we have a repeat crime activity going on. We're not sitting silent. I'm glad that you brought that up, Ms. Brooks. All right. Okay, so now we'll move down to the next item on the agenda, and that's a presentation from outside agencies. I'm sorry, let's go ahead to the consent calendar. Thank you.
Mayor, I move that we approve consent calendar A.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, if not, start voting, please. Awesome.
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you, council. Now we're going to move on down to presentation from an outside agency. We have the library board annual report. We can have the library board representatives come up to the podium.
Evening, counselors. Good to see you all. This is Will Krebs. He is the chair of our library board, and he is going to do our presentation for us tonight.
PowerPoint. Alrighty. A little PowerPoint. I want to thank Jamie Kaufman, my vice chair, for putting this together. And I'll try to make this a little briefer. I know you guys have a very big meeting today, so I'll rush through it there a little bit more. But basically, go ahead and we start out with just to inform the general community, what is the library board? What do we do? So I'm going to hit the second slide there. So what do you think the library board is? Ready for the next one? Basically, we have a twofold purpose. We're advocates for the library in the community. We try to represent, activities and try to encourage the community to be involved with the library. And then we're also responsible for providing guidance and recommendations for how the library operates. This could be anything from the last couple of years with their recommendations for how they're going to operate during COVID. It can be a new piece of technology, and how does that piece of technology get used? And those are some of the last couple of years and things that we've looked at. Just briefly to go over our next slide there, I'm just going to go briefly over the board members and what brought us into the library, why we're members of the library board. And obviously, we're always looking for new board members there. So if anyone here has a passion for reading, a passion for the library, please come maybe see the city council member, let them know that you're interested in being part of the library board. Myself, I got involved with the library. If you've been over to the library there, you'll see that origami display. I started an origami club when I first moved to Alamosa, and that brought me into the library and having a desire to help out. And from there, I'd like to just stress the fact of all the things that the library has to offer to the community. There's a lot of things that a lot of people don't realize that we have. Next slide. As I said, my vice chair, Jamie Kaufman, she was actually an employee of the library, and she's very interested in getting the youth and teens to come back to the library. You don't see a lot of interaction with that, so that's sort of her passion and what brought her into on the library board. Next slide. My wife is our secretary, and she's had a lifelong love of reading. She's been a newspaper editor for many years. She likes writing and all that. And through the Friends of the Library and our annual literary magazine, she got involved with the library board. Next slide. Melissa Hunter is another member of the library board, and she has a love of literature as well. And additionally, as she's been part of the library, she wants to sort of emphasize how dedicated our library staff is, how much they're going through, especially through the COVID, having the pandemic, how much the library board, or how much of the library, the staff just really pulled together and kept it open. And we're doing the book drops outside and doing all the other things that they do to keep the library up and going for the past 2 years. Next slide, please. Parel Patel is our junior board member. She's a high school student, has just an interest in serving the community and came to us because of her love of the library as well. Next slide. Michelle Woodward is a elementary school teacher, may know her as the wife of the Woody's Q-Shack owner, but she loves teaching and making sure that the children's literacy is another big focus of hers. And so she sort of, that's her angle on our board, is to improve literacy and get the school kids back into the library as well. Next slide. And then our final board member is Mandy Wildner. She's like myself, a recent recent Alamosian coming into Alamosa, and she saw how well the community focused around the library, and she wanted to continue that passion. So then, of course, our other members, next slide, please. We can't forget, first off, our city council representative that we usually have there. Jan is still with us right there. But in addition to that, we have Andy Rice, who's the library director, and of course, Saleha Taylor back there, who introduced me there. The glue that sort of holds the board together, providing us information, sort of serving as a liaison to the library and what the board can do and the community as well. Next slide. So we haven't been able to do a lot of events because of COVID. We try to do something like once a year or so, but we have been doing Little Free Library scavenger hunts. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Little Free Library, but they're a program that really Saleha has been instrumental in bringing to our community. They're the little boxes out here in the park. They're free library books. You can take one, you can drop one off and share books with people. And so we created a scavenger hunt to sort of raise awareness around the Little Free Libraries with the coordination of the library staff, the board, and the Friends of the Library. And basically it was just a scavenger hunt where you would find the different libraries. There was, we have next slide, please. Well, next one. So basically you would go around to these little libraries there and they'd have a clue hidden in there. And if you assembled all the clues, they would spell out the name of our library reading dragon, Penelope. And they have little scales. So next slide. And there you can sort of see what you'd find there. That was one of the things there, and a couple of our scavenger hunters right there. Okay, in addition, just with our general stuff, our board members also play a large role in the community. I'm just going to highlight some of the things that we do that are library related. Next slide. Myself, in addition to having done the origami, we also, my wife and I, established a Little Free Library at the Senior Center. And we've also helped with the annual literary magazine. We've gone out to schools and given out awards and handed out awards. My wife has done quite a bit as well. We'll get to that in a second. Next slide. Jamie, also very active in the library, helps out with the summer reading programs here. If you see that picture of the fox right there in the center there, she dressed up as a fox, tagged the fox, and read to children and helped our youth librarian, Holly, with that. Next slide. and also was in the parade and has helped with putting up displays in the library as well. Next slide. And I said, as my wife is also heavily involved in a lot of things, but the Little Free Library, she's been the MC for the literary when we've had the annual one. Hopefully sometime in the future, we're not doing one this year, but I know in the future that we'll be having those where we actually get the whole community in. They are allowed to read passages from the book, and she MCs all that. And then last but not least, Baral Patel is very active. She's our, like I said, she's our youth member and helped out with the summer activities, such as the summer reading program. And next slide. And then finally, and one of the main reasons that we're here today is we'd like to do, I had one more task this year that sort of sad, but happy at the same well. I served on the selection committee to help recruit the new library manager. So Saleha, could you come up, please? We're gonna be saying goodbye to Saleha after how many years? 20 years. She's stepping down as the library manager, going on to new adventures. And we had a little gift we'd like to give her here. Our little home is where the cat and books are, retired librarian. Give her that. So next slide, just a thank you for so much. Appreciate it. You've done a great job, and we're going to be sad to see her go, but we're in the process of hiring somebody new, and because the letter just went out to them, so hopefully we'll have some good news here in the future. Yeah. But thank you so much, Saleha. Thanks for making my job easier and all the library board members. We appreciate it. And thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Yes, we're going to have a few council members have a few questions for you. Okay, Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for all the work the library board does. I got to sit on it a little while, so another meeting came and took me away. But I really want to say thank you to all of the library staff and Saleha and just everything that happens. It's really amazing, and it's such a great resource for our community. So thank you.
Councilor Vio.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Want to echo what Ms. Daniel said too. The library board and what you all have been able to do just in the last 2 years, getting through COVID, but maintaining your numbers and getting people in there to use the computers, all that stuff is just amazing. And thank you very much. And Saleha, we're going to miss you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely another round of applause for Saleha and the whole staff of the library. Really.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for everything you do. Appreciate it. Make a huge difference. Readers become leaders and leaders are readers. All right. Okay, so council usually recognize elected officials who are in the meeting. There are several that we saw in here a little bit earlier. So I don't want to forget or not mention someone. So if we could have all of our current and past elected officials, please stand so we could just recognize you and just say thank you for the services you provided. If there are any, I know Commissioner Young was in here a little bit earlier. Any past or present elected officials? Okay, all right, thank you, thank you. All right, so now we're gonna get to the item we moved up on the agenda. I believe what most people are here to talk about tonight. And that is the first reading of ordinance number 5-2022. An ordinance amending section 5-42 of the Local Fair Campaign Practices Act to permit expenditures on non-municipal recall elections under the same circumstances as non-municipal ballot issues and approval of actions to address malfeasance of the district attorney. I'm going to turn this over to you. We're going to have two people presenting tonight. It's going to be our city manager, Heather Brooks, as well as our police chief, Mr. Kenny Anderson. And council, I'm going to ask that we allow them to go through their full presentation before we turn it back over to us for comments and further discussion so that they could get through their entire presentation. Okay, turning it over to you all.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to everyone who showed up tonight. It's clear that this is an issue that is very important to a lot of people. I would like to share from a city perspective that since the swearing in of the district attorney, Alonzo Payne, on January 12th, 2021, staff has become increasingly concerned about several areas. the professionalism of the office, the potential violations of the Victim Rights Act, also known as VRA, the unprecedented use of sweetheart plea deals for serious crimes, the lack of response in carrying out regular duties and communicating as a partner, and then the risk this places on our law enforcement officers because of emboldened criminals. As staff, we've made every effort to meet with the district attorney in an attempt to share these concerns and hopefully correct them. But those efforts have been fruitless. The district attorney has made it abundantly clear that the philosophical platform that he ran on applies to all levels of crimes and that he does not believe jail is productive. He has also made it very clear to us that he does not take the city's concerns very seriously, and he has no intention of changing. That's what it has led us to tonight. When the chief and I met with DA Payne, I shared that at the city of Alamosa, we share some of those philosophical beliefs. The city has had a youth diversion program for almost 10 years, and we have an adult diversion program. We've started the LEAD program that's been expanded to many areas in the valley, and we're getting ready to start the co-responder program. As City Council, you have decriminalized a majority of the municipal violations and removed jail as an option. We have made it clear throughout the years that we believe for lower level offenses, such as those that are prosecuted through municipal court or those that have an underlying addiction and/or mental health component, that jail may not be the most appropriate tool. Where we differ with the district attorney is that we believe on the higher level offenses, jail might be the correct tool, especially when there's a significant threat to the public, such as murder, sexual assault, domestic abuse, or drug distribution. I want to share this information about what the city's stance and philosophy has been, because I want to make it 100% clear that this is not about being a Democrat or a Republican. I do not want someone to discredit what our concerns are and try to say that we're simply against this Democrat with his political platform. The item tonight before council honestly is unprecedented. And I'm going to admit right now, I know we used strong language in both our presentation and the written materials. We're not throwing these words like incompetence around lightly. We do know we are talking about someone who was elected by residents. But as we began to look at this issue, it was like lifting a rock and a lot of ugly things started crawling out. Listening to the victims, which you've just gotten a small taste of tonight, is utterly heartbreaking. Listening to the professionals across the state as they sit on these boards and listen to this information and have to grapple with the utter disregard for the law, the authority of the state, and the disdain towards victims, it is embarrassing.
City Council, Mr. Mayor, I want to share with you a few samples of plea deals that highlight the threat, excuse me, that highlight the threat to our community. Our police department has conducted over 40 narcotic operations in the last 9 months. Not one of these cases has resulted in a trial. They have all been dismissed or pled to less serious offenses with very minimal jail time. These operations include significant amounts of seized drugs, money, and weapons. Heather's got the pictures up, so go ahead and go through these. We've got a few pictures, just obviously things that we get on all of these narcotic operations. A lot of drugs, money, that's about close to half a pound of heroin right there. Same thing there, crystal meth, go ahead and go down. One of the things we're running into quite frequently on these narcotic operations are these. Hold it there, hold it there. This is semi-automatic 12 gauge. Semi-automatic 12 gauge, okay? Gets better. Go to the next one, please. So I wanted to show this picture because these weapons that we're running into now, I'm kind of considering them to be cop killers. These will penetrate our bulletproof vests. That right there is a AR-10. Okay, a lot of you have heard what an AR-15 is. Well, this is an AR-10. This shoots a 308 caliber round. It's the same round I use going elk hunting. Okay, dangerous weapons held by very dangerous people. Okay, thank you. In comparison, when the city partnered with federal agencies on some of these cases, hold on one sec. We partnered with federal agencies on a few of these cases. I just wanted to kind of give you guys an idea of what the outcomes were in federal court compared to what they are in our state court. 3 cases, 10 years, 15 years, 15 years. That's Fed prison time. Well-deserved too. Let me give you an example on a couple of these cases. Mr. Eric Gibbs, charge of murder, pled down to criminal attempt, tampering with a deceased body. Due to the plea being a non-violent felony, Mr. Gibbs has the possibility to be eligible for parole after 3 years. Mr. Gibbs allegedly shot and killed a person in his home, buried the body underneath his house, and booby-trapped the house with explosives. An entire city block had to be evacuated while waiting for the Pueblo bomb squad to secure the scene. I was at this one. Mr. Richard Newton, officers made contact in a parking lot in Alamosa in the city limits for an active arrest warrant. Mr. Newton refused to exit his vehicle and accelerated, dragging a Colorado State Patrol trooper who was backing up one of my city officers through the parking lot, causing injury to the officer. We are very lucky that this was not more serious and that officer was not injured more than he was. However, Mr. Newton was charged with assault 1 serious bodily injury with a deadly weapon. That's an F3 felony, punishable by 10 to 30 years in prison, resisting arrest, obstructing government operations, reckless endangerment, and reckless driving. The case was pled to assault 2, an F2, a felony punishable by 5 to 16 years. But under the plea deal that our district attorney provided, he received a deferred sentence for 36 months and 60 hours of community service. All other charges were dismissed. Trey Howell and April Behrens, another case, murder of a 16-month-old baby who had trauma to the brain due to being smashed into a door. Howell pled to accessory to crime and got 72 months deferred sentence with terms and conditions of probation. It's unacceptable. Behrens pled to child abuse negligently causing serious bodily injury attempt and received 2 years community corrections with 369 days time served, credit for time served.
As we talk about the district attorney, and from what you've heard tonight, clearly we need to talk about the violations of the VRA. As of February 9th, the Colorado Crime Victim Advisory Board has received 8 complaints under the VRA. For the first time since the existence of this board, which is approximately 30 years, the board found that the DA's office was non-compliant in regards to 4 of the complaints and voted to refer the matter to the governor's office. The other 4 complaints that came in later were reviewed on February 25th. The subcommittee at that point in time unanimously found that all the allegations of violations of the VRA in these last 4 complaints were substantiated and forwarded them to the Colorado Crime Victim Advisory Board. Of note, normally this subcommittee would try to rectify the situation with the district attorney's office, but given the 4 prior complaints, they figured that would be pointless and instead voted to send it immediately to the board, which they anticipate will be forwarded to the governor and ultimately the AG as well. As the city attorney listened in on the meeting, there were several comments that were made that actually sound very similar to those comments shared with you tonight. It's a dereliction of duty, victim blaming, appalling and egregious, re-victimized by the person who is supposed to be advocating for you. The victim felt the DA was working on behalf of the defendant and not the victim. We don't have a background in these complaints to the VRA, so we have no idea if 8 is a lot. So we sent in a request for information and found out for the previous 4 years prior to Alonzo Payne, there were 0 complaints issued to this board. The complaints include lack of fairness, respect, or dignity, lack of information related to the plea deals and hearings, requests for information just being simply ignored, refusing to meet with the victims, and explosive and confrontational behavior. As the Colorado Division of Criminal Justice tried to work through these complaints, they made multiple attempts to contact the district attorney. Email, mail, certified mail. All of those were ignored by the district attorney's office. As I listened in to a separate meeting for the first 4 complaints, there were a lot of comments that caught my attention. One of the reviewers with over 10 years of experience noted that it was the most egregious complaint ever reviewed by the board. When describing the environment that the trainers encountered when they were on site at District Attorney Payne's office for the VRA mandatory training, 2 staff members were dressed inappropriately, one in sweats and another in a superhero shorts and a t-shirt. One attendee would have an outburst almost every 40 minutes, causing the training to have to pause. Even though the training was required and scheduled in advance, the district attorney missed over an hour, and when he was present, spent a significant amount of time on his phone, disengaged from the training. The trainers indicated that it was the most hostile and unhealthy environment they had ever encountered. There was a clear lack of respect and professionalism. About a month following this mandatory training, the board was made aware that there were another 20 cases that were either dismissed or pled out without contact with the victims, a clear indication that the training was not taken seriously.
In addition to these areas, we've also found the office to be non-responsive to communication efforts, dismissive and combative during meetings, and lacking in timely performance of duties. For example, in December, it was brought to my attention that over 20 warrants within my police department had not been processed, which means 20 different cases with victims had sat on the DA's desk without actions for weeks and some longer. These included domestic violence cases, 3rd-degree assault, 2nd-degree assault, 2nd-degree forgery, theft, 2nd-degree burglary, and felony menacing cases. Such a delay can have serious consequences. I want you to bear with me for a sec. I am not a robot, okay? Just want you to be aware. OMS student Jaden Cruz. He'd been bullied at school, and on Friday, October 1st of 2021, I apologize, guys. I'm doing the best I can here.
Take your time, Chief. Take your time. We got you. You're good. Take your time. Take your time.
Okay, so Jaden been bullied at school Friday, October 1st, 2021. He was assaulted by other students, as other individuals have mentioned today. Our department had the charges to the district attorney the following Monday. This occurred Friday. We got the charges there Monday. The charges sat without action on the DA's desk. On December 21st of 2021, Jaden tragically took his own life. Get in there, get in there. I want you to think about the dates here. Yeah, thanks. I got it. Okay. Sorry, guys. The DA's office finally filed the charges on January 11th of 2022. You all heard the dates that I read to you, correct? This is a 13-year-old kid. His guardians assert that without the abandonment by the district attorney's office, Jaden more than likely would not have killed himself. Go ahead, Heather.
What we want to point out tonight as well is that the excuses and the narrative that the district attorney provides, they're not relative, and they do not explain away the actions or lack of actions from his office. The district attorney will say his office is underfunded or that he has a big workload to keep up with. But for the last decade, the district attorney's office has been underfunded. That has been true for every single district attorney who's held the office prior to District Attorney Payne. Yet these previous district attorneys have prosecuted high-level offenses and sought jail time. Also, as a side note, I do want to mention during this time that we've heard that there might be pressure on the county commissioners to reduce funding for the district attorney's office. From a staff perspective, we want to be clear that given the historical lack of funding for the DA's office, we don't believe reducing funding will help. It will only further weaken any prosecution, and it's not going to change the motive for District Attorney Payne or motivate him. In fact, with less money, the district attorney will only have another excuse for why he cannot aggressively prosecute. So we don't feel it is a good long-term strategy. The district attorney has also indicated that staff changes, mostly the departure of Deputy DA Alex Rains, should address the concerns related to the VRA violations. However, these violations have been occurring for over a year. They have involved more than just one attorney, including the district attorney himself, and it speaks directly to his leadership in his office. I also anticipate that the district attorney will attempt to claim that the dissatisfaction that us and those in the public have is based on the political differences, i.e. a Democrat versus Republican. To that, I want to point out something that's obvious. We have a city council that's diverse and represents both political parties and even independents. As I've talked to community partners about these concerns, the dissatisfaction crosses both political parties. And finally, that's why we opened this presentation with the history of the city and the philosophy we have on the lower level crimes.
Through DA Payne's efforts to avoid jail sentences, there's been an increase in the use of the 12th Judicial District Probation Office for more serious offenses. I wanted to learn more, so I met with Bill Gurulay. He's the Chief Probation Officer within the 12th, and he's here tonight. Currently, his office has 14 certified probation officers. These probation officers are responsible for over 700 probation clients to date. It's about 50 clients per officer. None of the certified probation officers carry a sidearm or a bulletproof vest. As of lately, the new clients being referred to the probation officer are too high risk, and it is dangerous for the probation officers who are not equipped, thus putting the lives of the officers more at risk. One might ask, if they're too dangerous for probation officers, why are the cases being pled down and jail not being utilized? I think that's where we need to start using jail.
When we first began looking into this situation, one of the first questions we had is, what is the role of the judges? In fact, District Attorney Payne has also tried to dodge his accountability by indicating that the plea deals and dismissals are okay because the judges have allowed them. What I have learned is that it's more complicated than this. There is a general discomfort among some judges about the plea deals, dismissals, and veracity of the district attorney's word when it comes to working with victims. For a dismissal, all that the prosecutor has to show is a legal reason for the dismissal, which often can be that they cannot prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, or that the victim will not cooperate. Since the judges do not have access to the evidence, nor are they privy to the communication of victims, they have to rely on the word of the prosecutor. It is also similar for plea deals and bond hearings. There have been a few instances where judges have denied a plea deal, and/or dismissal. In one instance, when a judge was hesitant to accept a plea, the prosecutor made a comment that they would just dismiss the case then, thus resulting in no penalties. I've also learned that there may have been multiple instances where the district attorney's office has told the court that they have communicated with the victim when in fact the victims claim otherwise. To get to this point, we plan to submit a CORA request to identify these instances because that would constitute a very serious ethical violation.
In District Attorney Payne's own words, overzealous and unwarranted prosecutions have put such a strain on our criminal justice system that it is at a breaking point. I would argue that applying the oversimplified don't put them in jail philosophy to all levels of crime is simply irresponsible and contrary to the role of the prosecutor. There's a difference between someone who is shoplifting because of an underlying substance use condition and someone who is distributing pounds of drugs with assault weapons and thousands of dollars in drug money. There's a difference between low-level offenses and murder. The inappropriate plea deals have left victims feeling helpless and often re-victimized and have sent a clear message to those considering great law consequences or accountability for criminal activity put our community and officers at risk. We put our officers' lives at risk every time they have to make an entry on a narcotics operation or any other critical incident. Our neighborhoods and residents are at risk when criminals are allowed to avoid jail time and walk around our community. I am the one they call when they are scared, and I'll be honest, I am running out of responses. The comments I hear now from residents, at least we have a day of no fear. That's why we're arresting them and taking them to jail, because they know they'll be out tomorrow. These are our victims whose voices are being ignored. Victims I made a pledge to protect and serve over 21 years ago, and I stand firm on that.
So this is a tough situation for the city because we actually have no control over the district attorney, who is an elected official. However, there is a current movement to petition for a recall election, and that is what brings us to tonight. Under the city code section 5-42, council can direct the city to spend up to $10,000 on ballot issues in local elections. However, as it's currently written, we cannot spend that on candidates or recall of persons holding office. We made this distinction when writing the ordinance because we wanted to prevent spending on specific candidates for state or local office. However, the current circumstances show us that that may have been short-sighted when it comes to incompetence or the application of misguided policy when someone may need to be recalled. There is a direct city interest as it does have an impact on the city's financial and operational condition. Ordinance 5-22 would allow the city to spend funds on recall efforts for non-city recall elections. Since this would be a recall that covers the entire valley and is not just a local, we would only be able to spend funding up to the point where the Secretary of State certifies that the number of signatures, approximately 4,000, is sufficient to meet the standard. After that, we would not be able to participate. The expenditures, as we've written this ordinance, would be limited to recall elections where we can show a direct city interest. I recommend approving ordinance 5-2022 that is before you tonight, that would allow you to consider a resolution at your next meeting on March 16th. Additionally to approving these changes, I recommend submitting a letter to the Attorney General's office requesting an expanded investigation beyond just the VRA complaints. We also recommend that you authorize us to investigate whether any of District Attorney Payne's actions relating to the cases he reviews and representations to the court concerning facts surrounding those cases violate his ethical obligations under the Colorado Rules of Professional Conduct. Given the overwhelming breakdown of the judicial process because of poor performance, poor management, and the extreme application of a philosophy, staff does not feel that our community will be safe under the leadership of DA Payne and that another 3 years is not sustainable. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Brooks and Chief, we're going to turn it back over to council. And council, I'm going to allow everyone to I just ask if you let everyone get their first round of comments out before we start going back and forth. Okay, so that everyone can get an opportunity to speak tonight, okay? I will recognize you as I see your mics lit up. Counselor, that was a tie. Counselor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. My goodness. So thank you all for being here this evening and sharing your stories, first of all. It's not just the chief, right? It's not a robot. I can't tell you how frustrating it is, especially, I know some of us have different philosophies, right? I am very supportive of the philosophy that the city has had. And truthfully, and I will be 100% honest, when DA Payne was running, his philosophy sounded okay to me, right? I do not want people in jail who don't belong in jail. I do not want people who have substance use concerns and mental health concerns and shouldn't be in prison for those to be in jail. But people who harm and hurt, as Erin was talking about earlier today, and as many of you were talking about earlier today, the accountability needs to be there so our community knows they can trust. We've built that trust up with our police officers. We've built that trust up with the things that the chief has been doing and the things that all of our community law enforcement officers across the San Luis Valley have been doing. Our justice system is not easy. Our justice system is not easy for victims in the best of times, let alone when it's harder for victims, let alone with the way that they have been treated in these situations. And that is not okay. And so I believe 100% that this is about an office that needs to be respected. It is not about a person, right? This is about an office that needs to uphold its duty to the citizens and the community members of the San Luis Valley. And that is the expectation we have to have. It is difficult as an elected official for me to say, I want to support recalling another elected official. That is difficult. It is something that I didn't think that I would ever be ready to say, because I don't think, like, they got elected for a reason, right? I believe that these violations of our community's rights, our victims' rights, the needs of our police officers and the needs of our citizens are being so violated that I have to support this personally as a recall effort, but also as an elected official, saying that that is not something I can stand for, because it's something I also have to hold them accountable for. And so I 100% support the staff's recommendation in this situation and support changing our ordinance to, I want to make sure, and I do think that the city attorney can help us with this after we all make our comments, making sure that this is limited, right? That we're not just expanding. I saw that it was only for non-municipal elections and things like that, but I'd really like to go into details about what the ordinance would be covering after we get to that point and we all get to say what we need to say, because I don't want it to be expansive. I don't want to make this bigger than it should be for us, because I already think this is a stretch, but I think it's an important stretch because we owe it to our communities to hold each other accountable. And truthfully, if I was behaving in a way that people felt like I was not upholding my duties as an elected official, I would want and expect that to happen and these hard conversations to happen with me. And I know that sounds hard, but it's true. I would want to be held accountable too. And so I support the ordinance. I support what the staff has said. And I really want to say thank you to all the people who are here and all of the stories that they shared and all the support that we heard today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Daniel. Councilor Hensley, followed by Councilor Woodward.
So I also support 100% everything that our city manager and Chief Anderson have presented. I also want to thank everybody who's come, everybody who's been on Zoom. Also all of the things that have been sent to us as well in regards to really reading through all the stories and all of the cases that have gone through those 8 cases, and there's more. reading about each of those 40 different arrests and each of the specifics about them, unbelievable. And each time it happens, you just sort of think, how in the world can this one go? And you read the front page of the paper and another plea deal or another thing that's gone through. The other thing, I'm sure a lot of you've gotten emails as well, is the animals, the different animals that have been abused and things like that, and also charges being dismissed. And so I'm not going to continue going on and on. I know there's a lot to speak, but I 100% stand behind this, stand behind the support for the recall and the change in the ordinance.
Thank you, Counselor Hensley. Counselor Woodward, followed by Counselor Griego.
Being born and raised here in Alamosa, I met my wife, actually lived over in Pueblo. We later moved to La Junta, and when she was pregnant with our first kid 15 years ago, we decided to move back to Alamosa. One of my main reasons was, one, my family was here, but the other thing that I told my wife is Alamosa is a great place to raise kids. Right now, 15 years later, I don't know that I could tell her the same thing and look her in the face and be honest with her. It's because of, especially in the last year, because of pain, it's almost a scary place to raise kids. There's so much drugs, so much filth, so much crime going on in this community. It's scary. I, along with everybody else that has talked so far, I support 100% doing whatever it takes to get pain out of here and take our community back. That's what we're all elected on. When I ran for city council, one of the premises I ran was I wanted to take our city back. And if it means doing whatever it takes to get pain out of here, I support 100%. The second thing, I was raised in a gun shop. I know what an AR-10 will do. I know what a semi-automatic shotgun will do. Those were never things that we had to think about when I was being raised in a sporting goods store downtown on Main Street. That was never a concern. Seeing those guns that our police officers have confiscated, it's scary. It's downright scary. It's terrifying. And I commend you guys for putting your lives on the line every single day to fight these guys, knowing that the arms that they're coming at you with. And it's scary. I'm honestly terrified for you guys. Every time that I read that you go into a drug house, it's just a matter of time before something bad happens. And I pray every night for you guys that doesn't happen. So I'm not going to elaborate on a lot here. I'm not going to go into what everybody said, but I do want to mention Jaden Cruz has come up a lot. That little boy was in my house as a little kid. Him and my youngest son were buddies for a long time. He was at birthday parties in my house. My heart was broken the night that I heard the news. And it's devastating. I know the family. I knew Jaden. Like I said, I knew Jaden from the time that he was in preschool. And it's sickening what is going on with that family. So I will support anything and everything that it takes to get Alonzo Payne out of here. And I will do anything and everything that it takes to take our community back.
Thank you, Councilor Woodward. Councilor Griego.
Thank you, Mayor. The chief said that he's been here 21 years. I supported the chief for 21 years now, working with him in his office in all the police departments. We've tried to give him whatever he needs to fight crime, because crime has increased in the city of Alamosa. So we've tried to give him anything, pretty much. We've given him money to buy various things to try to fight the crime. You know, my heart goes out to these people with all the victims and stuff like that. It's wrong. It's totally wrong that the Attorney General, the DA is not looking at these cases and bring it to attention. I think that you're doing it right. You know, you're going out there and recalling him. The voter is the one that put him in there. The voter is the one that's going to take him out. And through your unity, and we see the unity here, that the voters should take him out, you know. And in this communication, what I would like to see is the mayor send a letter to the Attorney General concerning the DA's malfeasance and let him look at it and see what's wrong with it. You know, we represent the whole city of Alamosa. There's been a lot of people too that have called me that have said, hey, they disagree with what the DA is doing. But they say that the city should not be involved with city monies to go after these people. If we want to individually go after the DA, we should, go out there ourselves, provide our own money and go for, enjoying the recall. But to use taxpayers' money, the 10,000 to recall somebody, I think it's wrong because we right now are giving money to the chief to stop this. And I know it's frustrating when people call and say, hey, 5 times they've broken into this house. Drugs around everywhere. It's been a hard deal. But I like I said, we represent all the city of Alamosa. And my deal is, let's send a letter to the DA. Let's bring him. To Attorney General. He was here already and looking at it. He spent some time with the DA. So I feel that we should send a letter to Attorney General and tell him exactly what's going on. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Councilor Villa.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Daniel, you talked about the stories, and that drug house is 2 blocks away from where I live. And the folks who live around there have got a hold of me time and time again, every single time you guys go over there. And they're so frustrated and they're scared. And that's not fair. Right? And they're frustrated with me that we're not doing anything up here. Well, we are doing stuff. We're giving you more money. We've approved a new FTE, like we're doing stuff. We did that. We changed the law a little bit on renters and the landlords and how we can go after them that way. So we're doing our job. You guys are doing your job. There's only one person in this whole thing who's not doing their job. And if you're not doing your job, you gotta go. You gotta get fired. You gotta go. So I do support that we go after them, that we put some money toward a recall effort. This is not okay. People are living in fear in their own neighborhoods. That's wrong. And if we can get these really bad guys off the streets, then we need to. I am in favor of that low-level crime stuff, the work that we've done that you mentioned, Ms. Daniel. I think that stuff needs to stay in line. But these drug houses, and they're laughing at our cops. That's insane. So I support this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. I'm just gonna finish up this first round and then I'll come back to council, okay? I would like to thank all of you who showed up tonight to share your voices and tell your stories. You can tell that your voices matter when you can see that council actually listens to what our residents and community members say. Thank you to all the people who are on Zoom, the over 47 people who are participating in that area as well. We're listening to what you have to say as well. It's gonna take the entire San Luis Valley to bring about the meaningful change that we would like to see in the DA's office. This is not going to be the last meeting, nor should it ever be the last meeting. And it's gonna take people from different counties, municipalities, and cities and towns. We're gonna have to spread the word if this is the direction that we're going to go. I am confident tonight, after hearing all of your stories and hearing your voices and hearing council, that we are sick and tired of being sick and tired of the injustice that we're receiving from the DA's office. But let's be clear, we wouldn't even be having that conversation tonight if the DA's office wasn't violating victims' rights. We wouldn't be having this conversation tonight if the DA's office was following up and following through with the responsibilities of that office. We would not be having this discussion tonight if the DA's office wasn't affecting our law enforcement operations and putting criminals back on the street. And finally, we wouldn't be here tonight if the DA office wasn't jeopardizing the safety of our residents and community members by putting these serious offenders back on the streets. Now, we put our law enforcement officers' lives at risk every time they go out on a narcotic operation. The chief mentioned it earlier. The Alamosa Police Department conducted over 40 narcotic operations in the past 10 months, and not one of those resulted in a trial. That is unacceptable. It's sad, very sad, that our law enforcement officers put their lives at risk to see no justice being done. No justice being done. And that's unacceptable. To add insult to injury, our law enforcement officers have arrested people, and guess what they do? They laugh. They laugh as they're being handcuffed at our law enforcement officers who are putting their lives on the line every day. And you want to know why they laugh? They laugh because they think it's a joke. They think our justice system is a joke. And then they know that they will be released in a matter of hours and back on the street doing what they're doing. That is unacceptable. The inappropriate plea deals have left our victims feeling helpless and hopeless. And that's feeling helpless and hopeless is one of the worst feelings there is. And that's unacceptable. And continue to put our community at risk by making sweetheart deals, threatening the safety of our community by allowing murderers to go back on the street, people who commit domestic violence, domestic abuse, sexual assault, drug distribution. All of that is unacceptable. It's been said that if you want to keep getting what you're getting, you just keep doing what you're doing. We are frustrated, we're disappointed, and we're fed up with getting what we're getting from the DA's office. So that's why tonight we're gonna change and start doing something differently. This is one thing I know to be true. If we unite and come together as a San Luis Valley community, we can bring about the meaningful change that we would like to see in our community. But if we don't take it any further than what we're doing tonight, nothing's gonna change. So I'm gonna encourage council as we finish up with this conversation to stand up and let the community know what we stand for by voting to move forward and proceed with the recall of DA Payne and also with the letter that needs to be sent off to the different departments. And finally, making sure that the chief gets all the tools and resources that he needs for his team to be successful in all of their endeavors. That's all I have to say, and then I'll bring it over here to Councilor Woodward. You good?
I got a question, Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilor Vigil.
I do have a question for Eric. Now that the Attorney General knows about kind of what's going on, can he do anything to remove him?
So the chief and I met with staff from the Attorney General's office. There's very little that the Attorney General can do unless there's any actual violations of law. They made it clear that they are sticking in their lane of the victim rights violations. And even with that, how victims are defined is narrowly defined. And so this letter maybe might get them to be able to expand their investigation into other areas, but we are not sure if they have the authority to do that.
Okay, and then my other question is, can he be put on like an improvement plan or something like that?
So what the Attorney General's office explained to us is right now their authority is to look into the violations of the VRA. They can compel him, if he doesn't want to comply with an agreement, they can compel him through court to comply, which means the training, changing the website, and changing their policy that they use for VRA. It does not include removal from office. They could try to get him to agree to an improvement plan, but he has to agree to that.
Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. Eric, can you walk us through the ordinance a little bit, please, about what has changed and the scope of it?
Yes, and perhaps the easiest way to do that is can I put this on the screen? I can put up the red line, which was attached to the materials of what has changed with respect to this ordinance. So we have an entire section that is devoted to the use of an entire section of our Fair Campaign Practices Act, our local Fair Campaign Practices Act, that is devoted to the use of city resources for local ballot issues. And as you may recall, that came about because we, under the State Fair Campaign Practices Act, the city would not be able to really do much in the way of educating and informing its citizens about why it was putting an issue before them and why the city was desiring a change. So what we did was the State Fair Campaign Practices Act allows local jurisdictions to adopt their own in lieu of the state one. And we adopted our own for a number of reasons. One was more realistic reporting requirements for campaign expenditures, and another was to be able to do this.
Eric, can I pause you for just a second? Can you blow it up? Because some people are trying to read it in the audience and they can't read it. That button at the top where the 100 is. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I think it's this one. I can hardly see. Okay. So anyway, there were a number of purposes, one of which was making the campaign reporting requirements more realistic for our local community. And the other was to address this issue. And so this section 542 specifically deals with the use of city resources for ballot issues and limits the use of city resources to spending up to $10,000 of city resources on local ballot issues. And also there is a provision for spending up to $10,000 on broader ballot issues if council, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but if council expressly finds and directs that in a resolution containing specific supporting facts and circumstances, that the issue is one that will have a financial or operational impact on the city. So the change that's being proposed here is to expand that particular provision to allow for expenditure of city resources on recall petitions or elections that do have, or that council finds do have, a financial or operational impact on the city. And the goal, and Councilor Daniel, if you have some questions about whether we've achieved the goal, but the goal was to expand that ability to use city resources only for recall elections. And the thinking is that the city, when it drafted this, didn't want to be involved in taking position on candidates, still doesn't want to be involved in taking positions on candidates. But as the circumstances relating to this district attorney and the way that he is hampering the safety of our community make clear, sometimes it might make sense to spend money on a recall, not on elections, but on a recall where the facts have demonstrated that the city's financial or operational status is being adversely affected by a particular elected official.
Thank you, Eric. That explanation is really helpful and I appreciate you sharing it with everyone who wasn't able to read it ahead of time. I have a clarifying question from something Heather said earlier. She said at some point after the petitions are signed, then we would no longer be able to participate. Can you help explain that as well? I got a little bit lost, so thank you.
So the issue is our local Fair Campaign Practices Act is applicable to our local elections. And the carve out from the statewide Fair Campaign Practices Act that allows cities to do their own specifically says for municipal elections. So once we go beyond a municipal election, we arguably anyway, and I think the argument is correct, are still subject to the provisions of the State Fair Campaign Practices Act. That would mean for this recall election, because it's a valley-wide election, we would be subject to those provisions. And one of the provisions of the State Fair Campaign Practices Act is that governmental entities cannot spend monies on a recall election of a specific candidate once the Secretary of State has certified the petition as being sufficient. So we can spend money up to the point where the petitions get submitted to the Secretary of State and the Secretary of State says, yes, you have 4,000 plus valid signatures. This is going on the ballot. At that point, we're done.
And then to be
From
clear,
from a staff perspective, we feel like the biggest hurdle is getting the number of signatures, because there's a certain time frame once the language has been approved by the state. There's a certain time frame to get those signatures. And then obviously once that hurdle is we've gone over it, then it's in the hands of the voters, and that's where it should be.
And if you want, I could give you a brief, I'll make a very brief rundown of what that process is, but.
so maybe in a second, I have one other question. I'm sorry, I just want to make sure everybody understands, right? They elected us to make sure that we do use our money appropriately. And I want to also honor Councilor Griego and his concerns. So if we do not move forward with this ordinance to change our practice in this process, this would mean that no staff time could be because of resources being spent. So if we do not move forward with this ordinance in some fashion, whether we change it at all, the staff can't help or answer questions or move in the direction with the recall petition, correct?
That's correct, because as currently written,
Yep.
it says that we cannot spend city resources on a recall election.
And that
and
includes staff hours, not actual cash money.
That's correct.
Thank you. Now you can explain the rest of the process.
Just a brief rundown on how the process would work. Some entity that would be, if you will, the sponsor of the petition needs to take the petition language to the Secretary of State and says, here's the language we want to have on our petition that we want to circulate for a recall. The Secretary of State then approves or disapproves that. And if the Secretary of State disapproves it, you go back again until you get it right. There is an opportunity for the candidate who is subject to the recall to put in a statement. And if they do that within a 3-day period that the statute gives them, then the candidate's statement goes on the petition as well. So pretty soon anyway, after that, the Secretary of State approves the petition. Once the petition's approved, the circulators have 60 days to get the requisite number of ballots or signatures on the petition. And if the 60-day period goes by and the requisite number isn't achieved, then the petition is dead in the water. It doesn't go to the election. If the signatures are sufficient, the Secretary of State makes that determination and then forwards it to the governor, who sets an election date, which has to occur in the window between 30 and 60 days from when that determination of sufficiency was made. And there's some other days that float in there and move that, but that's the broad outline. The election occurs then in that 30-day window that's 30 days, between 30 and 60 days after the sufficiency determination. Unless there's a general election coming up within 90 days from the sufficiency determination, and then it happens on the general election.
Thank you. Councilor Griego?
Thank you, Mayor. You know, I support the victims out there, and this guy is doing probably the wrong things. What I don't support is the fact that the voters put this gentleman in there and the voters should take him out. To get the city involved in something like this, we're involved. We had a work session where we kind of get a consensus that the city manager would expose all this stuff that's going on out there, so the people would know about all this. Well, what I didn't understand was the fact that we were going to throw taxpayer money against this. You know, It's a hard deal. Like I said, we represent all the citizens of the city of Alamosa. I've had calls from people that say, hey, we see what he's doing and it's wrong, but the city has no right using our money to go after this guy. If they want to, they can use their own money and support a recall. And a lot of we support the recall, but to use taxpayers' money this way, I think is only opening a can of worms. My heart goes out to all these people. I have family that's been victims too. So, but to use taxpayers' money in this case, I think it's wrong. I think we should send that letter to Attorney General. Let the Attorney General get involved in this. He's already involved. Let him move forward and say this guy's breaking down and so forth. But I will support the first reading, but I will not support using taxpayer money to go after an elected official, because like I said, this thing, we're a nonpartisan group of people here, and this has become very political. It has become very political, and like I said, it's a hard thing. I will support this going on, but I will not support using taxpayers' money to get rid of an elected official. And I know he's doing wrong. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Councilor Woodward.
So I'm going to argue against what you're saying, Charlie, and I do respect what you're saying, but part of our job is to look after the taxpayers' money. And I don't believe that there's many taxpayers out there that would vote against us spending money to make our community a better community. I don't think that would happen.
Thank you, Councilor Woodward. And Councilor Hensley.
So I understand where you're coming from, Councilor Griego, but the amount of money that we are spending already in regards to the rest of the people to keep our city safe, we're spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And what's the value of a human life and things like that? And so for me, it's that idea that for $10,000 to help keep our city safe, we've already put all the rest of it in. I feel like our taxpayers are going to support the fact of putting $10,000 in.
While we thank you for your applause, we do ask that you keep your applause don't have any applause, because it delays the meeting, then it could kind of disrupt things, okay? But we appreciate that, but we're going to ask you to just hold off on that, okay? Thank you. Councilor Daniel?
Thank you, Mayor. And Councilor Griego, I hear where you're coming from. And I think one of the things that I believe our role is to help our community. The reason we made the FCPA the way we did was so we could help our community in other ways. That's why we designed it. We didn't see this coming. Heather's right. This wasn't one of our plans. I also think it's usually not in our wheelhouse to do a recall election, but because it's impacting our community in such a way that it is, that's why I appreciate the way the ordinance is written. I appreciate that there has to be standards in place, that there has to be evidence coming to us that says that this impacts our operations, it impacts our community, and that it's impacting the way the city operates. Because we can't go down a slippery slope with this. That's not okay. And so our values are what our priorities should be. Our value is public safety, and we have to put money where our values are. We have to put money where our priorities are. And I believe that $10,000 it's not nothing, right? But it's not a huge part of our budget, and it's going to give us what we need in order to support this recall election moving forward. And I think that makes a stronger stand when we say we're using money from our city because we believe this is something that our community wants and needs, that we are going to move forward with this. And I think that sends a bigger message to our community than anything else that we could do.
Thank you, Councilor Daniel. Councilor Griego.
Thank you, Chris. What I want to say is I support the people, okay? I support you. But the way we're going about it, you're doing it right. You're going get people together to recall him. It was the voter to put him in there. It's the voter should take him out. You know, but like I said, I can support the mayor sending that letter and getting this investigation going. But as far as the taxpayers' money, like I said, I will vote yes to send this in first reading. And let maybe people come down here, you know, and voice their opinion, both for and against it. You know, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grego. You mentioned something earlier, and the good thing about City Council, and it's good that we have the residents out here to see how we can actually have civil conversation. We can agree to disagree and continue to take care of the city's business. And that's what we do. So we'll go back and forth for a little while on this before we bring it to a vote. But Councilor Griego, I heard you mention that we're making this political, and I honestly and genuinely do.
We're not making it political.
Okay, yeah, okay, because it's not our intention to make this political. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were clear. Okay, because this is more of a public safety issue than a political issue. And it is going to take the voices of all the people in the San Luis Valley to bring about this change. Any other comments before we move forward on this issue? Thank you, Councilor Grego. Councilor Hensley?
I'm ready to make a motion unless there's any other.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and move that we approve ordinance number 5-2022 on first reading and set for public hearing on March 16th, 2022 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter as the matter may be heard. I also move that we approve sending a letter to the Attorney General concerning DA Payne's malfeasance in office and direct staff to further investigate potential ethics violations.
I second.
We have a motion, second. Any further discussion? If not, please start voting. Ms. Martinez?
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. That brings us up to the next item on the agenda. And that is going to be under business brought forward by city staff, development services, and motion authorizing an increase in matching funds for a recycling resources economic opportunity grant.
Mayor, we may want to take like a 2-minute break, and I imagine the audience is going to thin considerably.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take it. And council, if you all need to go ahead and take a quick, say 5-minute restroom break. Yeah, go ahead, because we're gonna be here for a little bit. You're welcome. For the Zoom audience, we're gonna take a brief 5-minute break and we'll resume. Okay. Thank you for the nice break. We're gonna go back and pick up where we left off. Development services, a motion authorizing an increase in matching funds for recycling resources economic opportunity grant. That's you, Mr. Harry.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
I think I'm taking the lead. Miss Rachel stepped out, so I think she's joining us on Zoom. Last summer, Rachel applied for a grant from the the Recycling Resource Economic Group. That's also known as the REO group for $25,000. The money was to be used to build a cover over the cardboard drop-off site at the recycling center, and also to help with some of the stormwater grading issues that we have for a concrete slab where the water kind of collects in the cardboard. Each time we get a storm, whether it's rain or snow, what it does is it compromises the quality of the cardboard. And in return, we get less for, when we turn it in, we get less money for the recycled materials. Due to the timing of the grant and how it's established and the workload going into the winter, the project was scheduled to start this spring. So this last month, we put the project out to bid, and it came in significantly higher than what we expected. So the city's match would be $20,000 towards the project. To kind of give you a little bit of background on the revenue, in 2021, the income budget for the recycling center was $15,000, but the actual revenue that was received was $127,000 for the facility plus change. So it's a difference of $112,000. What staff is asking is the council considers to allow us to use $20,000 from that revenue and to apply towards the match requirements and move forward with the project.
Okay, thank you so very much. Councilor Daniel, or Councilor Vio.
This is awesome. I'm thrilled that we're making improvements out there and it's getting better for not only our workers, but for the people who use the recycling center. So if there's nothing else, I'd move that we authorize an increase in matching funds for Recycling Resources Economic Opportunity Grant.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, council, please start voting. Ms. Martinez?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, council. Thank you. All right, brings us to the next item on the agenda. On the police, public hearing and motion authorizing application for USDA grant to replace one detective vehicle within the Police Support Services Division.
Mr. Mayor, City Council. This one should be a little easier, I think. So staff is requesting council approve the application for a USDA grant to replace one detective vehicle within the Police Support Services Division. The Support Services Division added one vehicle to the fleet in 2021. The police vehicle currently has over 122,000 miles and is in and out of our fleet mechanic shop for repairs each month. The vehicle is assigned to the new narcotic detective, and it was an administrative vehicle before 2021. It was my old car. I reassigned it. The USDA grant, if approved, will provide $25,000 and the city will be responsible for $5,000. The purchase of a used lower mileage vehicle will keep the vehicle replacement program on track and will provide a stable and sustainable fleet.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Councilor Vio.
Mayor, I move that, this is good stuff. I move that we authorize application for a USDA grant to replace one detective vehicle within the Police Support Services Division.
I'll second.
We have a,
Doesn't it have to be a public hearing? Excuse me.
Let me try that again, folks. I recommend that City Council hold a public hearing to be compliant with grant requirements at the next meeting.
No,
Heather shaking her head. What, Heather? Tell me, Heather.
can you hold off voting for just 1 second and open the public hearing at this meeting, please?
all right, good. We got ahead of ourselves.
My fault.
It's all good. Okay, so now we're going to open up the public hearing. For the motion, we're gonna open up the public hearing. Yeah, for the second reading of ordinance number 4-2022.
No, so this would be a hearing to authorize staff to apply for the USDA grant to replace a detective vehicle.
Thank you, Heather.
Right, this is a
That's-
little weird, but USDA grants require a public hearing. So normally we wouldn't necessarily do that on a motion, but for a USDA grant, we do need to do
have
that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. So it wasn't any of our faults, just want everybody to know. All right, good deal. Use DA, okay? So at this time, we're gonna open up a public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make any comments in regards to this item? If so, please come up to the podium. Okay, we don't have anyone in the audience who's coming up, so we're gonna open it up to the attendees. Ms. Martinez, would you give them instruction on how to raise their hand if they would like to make any comments at this particular time about this item?
Yes, sir. If you're on the Zoom app, you'll just use the raise your hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're on a telephone, you'll dial *9 to raise your hand.
Okay, I don't see any hands raised.
Mayor, there's one hand raised.
Oh, one. Okay, David Osborne. We see your hands raised. David? David, go ahead and start speaking. If you would like to speak in regards to this item.
We can't hear you if you're
We
speaking.
can't hear you, David. Okay, he lowered his hand, so maybe it was raised in error. Okay, so seeing that we don't have anyone in the audience and seeing that no hands are raised, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to Councilor Vio for his motion. No. Okay, we got a second?
My second's still there.
Okay. All right, we got a motion and a second. No further discussion. All right, let's start voting. Okay,
The motion carried unanimously.
awesome, awesome. Great job, Council. You're doing good. That brings us down to the next item, a public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 4-2022, an ordinance amending the definition of police officer in section 11-22 through 11-24 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Alamosa concerning offenses related to the administration of justice.
Thank you, Mayor. And because a picture is worth 1,000 words, I'm going to show this brief clip of the incident at Walmart that gave rise to this ordinance relating to off-duty sheriff's deputy Ricardo Martinez attempting to assist Nathan Northrup, who is the security chief at Walmart, with a shoplifter, because it pretty clearly illustrates why this is necessary. So here's Ricardo Martinez coming out in his vacation shirt and noticing something going on and attempting to assist. He identified himself as a sheriff's deputy, and he told this shoplifter to stop and that she was under arrest, and she did not believe him, nor take kindly to him. She was charged with resisting arrest because she's clearly resisting arrest from a sheriff's deputy. But I dismissed those charges because our ordinance requires a off-duty officer who is not in uniform. Well, two things. One, requires an off-duty officer who is not in uniform to exhibit credentials, which during the course of this altercation, Deputy Martinez did not have a chance to do. And then two, our ordinance as written applies only to city police officers or Adams State University police officers because it specifically calls out police officers. So the ordinance addresses those two issues. And at first reading, council passed the ordinance on first reading, but wanted a change to require the exhibition of credentials as soon as it was reasonably possible to do so. And let me just read to you what how I tried to incorporate that concept, adding the language, if the totality of the circumstances does not allow the out of uniform officer to exhibit his or her credentials prior to attempting an arrest or seeking aid, the officer shall exhibit such credentials as soon thereafter as circumstances allow. Failure of an out of uniform officer to have such credentials available at the time shall not constitute a circumstance justifying a failure to present such credentials for purposes of this definition. In other words, if you don't happen to have your badge or your law enforcement ID card with you, you are not going to be able to charge somebody with resisting arrest under the municipal ordinance. So any other questions? I'm happy to field them, but I think you also then need to hold a public hearing before taking this matter further.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, ma'am.
So I read that little piece twice, and so I don't think I read it correctly. So if they don't have their credentials, can you just say that again? If they don't have their credentials, then the arrest doesn't count?
Well, the arrest might count, but you cannot charge them with resisting arrest.
With resisting, okay.
Because you didn't prove to them
That you were.
even afterward that you really were an officer. We really want to encourage officers to carry their credentials, which I think the chief confirmed the Alamosa Police Department officers anyway certainly did.
No, that makes sense. When I read it, that is not what was clear to me. So I
It's a little
appreciate-
bit legalese, I will admit that, but, and I don't like legalese, but that's where I ended up.
As long as you and the judge know what this means and we had that conversation, I feel comfortable with this.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 4-2022, an ordinance amending the definition of police officer in section 11-22 through 11-24 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Alamosa concerning offenses related to the administration of justice. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make any comments in regards to this item? Please feel free to come up to the podium. Okay. All right, I don't see people running up to the podium, so we're gonna go ahead and go to the Zoom. And Ms. Martinez, if you could one more time, share with the Zoom participants how to raise their hand so we can recognize them.
Yes, sir. If you're on the Zoom app, you'll just use the raise your hand feature on the bottom of the screen. If you're on a telephone, you'll dial *9. Mayor, I
Okay.
don't see anyone raising their hand.
Okay, so we're gonna close the public hearing and bring it back to council for direction. Okay, Council Grego?
If there's no further questions, I'll make the motion that we pass on second reading. Ordinance number 4-2022.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Councilor Daniel?
I just want to say thank you for adding that to the ordinance. Counselor, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Please start voting. Think we might be missing one. There we go. Okay,
The motion carried unanimously.
awesome. That brings us to the next item on the fire. Public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 3-2022, an ordinance regulating open and indoor burning within the city of Alamosa.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As we discussed on first reading, this amends section 7-2 of our current code, which it's very short. It reads in its entirety as follows. No material shall be set on fire or burned within the city limits without permission of the fire chief or the fire chief's designee. By its plain terms, you can't run your boiler. You can't have a fire in your fireplace. You can't smoke a cigarette, really. It's overbroad. We know that's not what it means, but it makes sense to fix it. This was brought to our attention by a citizen who was burning weeds in his yard and was told by the police officer not to do so and shown this section, and he's a literal kind of guy. I know him very well, and suggested that we change it. So that's what this ordinance does and prohibits burning of things that we don't want burned, like outdoor trash incinerators and big giant bonfires, unless you have permission of the fire chief. But it does specifically allow you to have your backyard patio fires and your wood stoves and various things that we all assume we're allowed to burn.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing for ordinance number 3-2022, an ordinance regulating open indoor burning within the city of Alamosa. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to make any comments? You do? Okay, please. Yes, you're fine. Okay. Okay, I'll have our city attorney repeat your question.
The question was, does the ordinance get explicit in terms of really what is allowed and what is not allowed? And the answer is yes, it does. The ordinance expands on that one sentence considerably by saying specifically that you may not do any open burning of leaves, stumps, yard waste, dry grass, rubbish, or trash. But you specifically can do open burning of charcoal, clean untreated wood, and other cooking fuels customarily used in outdoor grill or traditional food cooking devices. And you can do burning of clean untreated wood in commercially manufactured fire pits, outdoor fireplaces, or other reasonably safe outdoor fire pit or outdoor fireplace, provided that the fire is contained. And burning for bona fide ceremonial or bona fide religious purposes, or for cremation is also allowed. So it does get fairly specific.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna give the Zoom participants an opportunity to participate in the hearing. If you would like to raise your hand, now is the time to do so, and we'll recognize you before we close this hearing. Okay. All right, we're gonna go ahead and close the hearing and bring it back to council. Counselor Daniel.
Thank you. Mayor, I move that we approve on second reading ordinance number 3-2022, regulating open and indoor burning.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Not, please start voting. Ms. Martinez.
The motion carried unanimously.
Okay, that brings us down the agenda to committee reports. Does anyone have any committee reports today? No committee reports, okay. No, okay, all right. Staff announcements. Ms. Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome.
We have just a few. I wanted to share with council that we have awarded or will be awarding the contract for our co-responder program. We had two great community partners submit interest to partner with us. One was behavioral health and the other was Valleywide. And so the chief and I have selected Valleywide, and we have the wheels turning. Hopefully within 60 to 80 days, we will have the person on board and trained so we can start this program. I also wanted to share with council that on Monday, we submitted a grant to DOLA. It was actually for a tier 2 grant, which is the larger category. We submitted a grant in the amount of $750,000 to look at replacing 3 lift stations. We recently completed the study on our wastewater collection system, and these are the top 3 lift stations that are critical to get replaced as soon as possible. Rachel also worked on a grant, a USDA grant, to further enhance the parking lot projects that we have downtown with lighting and landscaping. And so that was a grant in the amount of $115,000 that she submitted an application for. And that's all we have from a staff communication.
Thank you, thank you. Great job, staff, applying for those grants. Really appreciate that. That's good. All right, so that brings us down to the next item on the agenda, local liquor licensing authority action, liquor licensing item. I believe that's going to go to our attorney.
Thank you. Yes, typically you turn that over to me to run the public hearing for this. And what we will do is conduct a public hearing by having the representative from Maverick appear and present to council the nature of the application. And this application is a little bit different in the sense that Maverick had its act very much together. And so petition packets were turned in ahead of time and were included in the council communication in your Novus agenda, as well as photos of the posting at the location. So I don't know that there are separate copies of those petitions being presented. If there are, that's fine, but you do have access to those. And we will start off by marking the petition packets as Exhibit A and the notices, photos of the notices of the posting as Exhibit B. And I will just have Ms. Martinez confirm that the property was originally posted on January 24th and again on February 8th.
That's correct. And there was 2 postings because the original one didn't have structure windows or doors up, and then they had to repost for that.
And then the legal notice, I believe, was also published in the Valley Courier on February 5th. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so with that, we will start off, unless council has any preliminary questions, we'll start off by opening the public hearing and having a representative from Maverick present to council.
Hi, I'm Jenna Nelson, and I'm the representative for Maverick. I'm going to be the district manager over this store. So we are, sorry, this is my first time doing this, so I don't know. We have an extensive TAM training that all employees go through, and they go through it yearly. And it's our techniques of alcohol management. And it's just to aware all of our employees of the stings we can get, the people who come in to try to fake us into believing they're old enough to get alcohol, fake IDs, using someone else's ID. It shows us we have to enter a birthday or scan the back of the ID to go through the system. This is gonna be 3.2% beer. That's what the license is for. We won't sell between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. Delivery drivers won't deliver at peak hours. So no breakfast, no lunch, no dinner. It's gonna be in between. They're gonna be urged to lock their trucks while they're delivering, so there's no theft issues. And yeah, we have cameras in the beer caves. As you walk into the store, you can see in the back corner, it's the back corner where the beer cave is at. There's locks on all of the doors. There's cameras in all areas of the beer cave, so we can see the registers look straight to the cooler, so we can see who's walking in and who's walking out, so we can ID if they do look young. And our policy is to ID anyone who looks younger than 50 years of age.
Counselor Vijo?
I had a question. You mentioned 3-2 beer. You're not gonna sell it, or you are gonna sell it?
We are selling 3-2 beer.
And nothing stronger than that?
That is what I was told.
Your license would certainly permit you to sell any kind of malt beverage, which would include stronger beers. But I mean, if you want to represent the council that that's all you're selling, that's your representation. But the license certainly allows you to do.
Well, then I don't want to represent that because I'm not 100% positive. So let me just take that back. We'll just bring that back in.
I guess I had the same question. Did they even do away with 3-2 license?
They did, so they changed the 3-2 beer license to a fermented malt beverage. So all beer out there is like regular strength.
Okay.
So you're covered. You're
There we
covered, yeah.
Thank you.
There still is 3-2 beer available. I don't know that
In, like,
anybody
Utah.
buys it anymore.
Taking me back to the 80s. Okay.
I have a couple questions if council, once council's finished.
Go ahead.
Ms. Nelson, the packet that you submitted or that Maverick submitted of petition signatures is represented to contain, I think, 46 signatures. Is that right?
Yeah, so she's gonna talk about that.
Okay, very good.
Good evening, council, mayor, council members. For the record, my name is Eva Maloff Garrettson. I am one of the owners of Liquor Licensing Professionals. We are hired by the company to perform the petitions throughout the entire state of Colorado. I have been with the company, or bought the company, in 2017. I've been with it for 8 years now. We conduct both liquor and marijuana license surveys throughout the entire state of Colorado. We're also listed under Liquor Enforcement Division as a responsible vendor trainer for the state of Colorado. So we've done training for the Stampede, a couple of folks that go through violations. We actually come in and retrain them as well. So we did conduct the needs and desires for the fermented malt beverage, full leaded. beer for this particular location. So very familiar with Maverick. They've come over from Utah and started migrating their way back out this way. So we've got them coming out this way. So yeah, it's one of the current locations. So yes, we did. So I don't know what kind of questions you have, or unless you want me to give a presentation on it, I'm more than happy to do that.
It's
for
up to you. You can do what you like. I do want council to know what you did in terms of circulating them and how many signatures you had and things like that.
Most definitely. So when they came to me and they said, hey, we have a license in Alamosa, do you know where Alamosa is? I was like, please. That's my born and raised in Antonito, actually ran for Adams State. And so, yeah, coming back here, I was like, yeah, my family's back here. Sure. It's like, I'll take care of it. So prior to the start of the survey, usually our circulators are briefed on the type of liquor license that is being applied for. In this case, very important to let them know this is a fermented malt beverage, beer. But once again, your IPAs go in there as well. And this is for off-premise consumption. We also let them know that this isn't a place where you can go in, crack one open and go from there. I'm not sure if this is one of the locations. Maverick also has several locations where you can actually fill up growlers in part of the stores and stuff like this. I don't believe this is going to be one of those locations as well, but we also want to make sure that the public is aware of that. We carry 2 packets with us, a business packet and a residential packet. So when we go into places, we actually ask business owners or managers to identify themselves by circling whether or not they are a business owner or manager, and then give them the information. We do want to make sure that we contacted those other retail outlets in closest to the areas. You'll see from the business packet, we did actually contact the liquor store in there, which of course they see it as competition, does not want that there. But we also contacted the Alta right next to them, and they were certainly in favor of having something like this come in. The process that it was so cold that week. Alamosa, oh my gosh. And I go back to my Adams State where Coach Martin had us run 10 miles on Sunday mornings. He did not care about the wind. I hate the wind now. So I'm one of those that does not want to go out and be in the cold. So what we did is when we were in most of the business areas, we actually asked for residents inside Alamosa, as Ms. Hawley provided with the boundary for us as well. So we did ask for feedback of folks that actually lived inside the boundary area to see if they were in favor or not in favor of this particular license. So that is how we went ahead and comprised our signatures coming from there. So we did submit that to Ms. Hawley, and then she asked if we would be able to present our results at the hearing. So we're here now and be happy to answer any further questions.
What were your results?
So we actually had 28 signatures from business owners and managers, 25 signed in favor at 89%, and 3 are opposed at 11%. One of the reasons we do ask these folks to write in why they are in favor or opposed is to provide the authority with more feedback as to why they are in favor or opposed to this particular license. There is specific case law that actually has, if there is any reasons of opposition that may not speak necessarily to the needs and desires of the license. In this case, everybody just refused to put a comment down because we do have a reason down. So we count those as valid reasons of opposition. We actually had 18 signatures from residents inside the area. If we combine those, we have 43 signatures signing in favor at 93% and 3 opposed at 7%. Typically, we did over 500 surveys last year in the entire state. Now, my fermented malt beverage ones, usually favorable is anywhere in the lower 70s to mid 80s in jurisdictions. This is much higher. Folks were really excited about this gas station coming in. I kept hearing complaints of the Alta taking so long to pump gas out there. So I think they were really excited about something new like this coming in, another option for gas and to purchase alcohol. So.
Council have any other questions of the applicant?
Any other questions? No, no other questions. So.
I see Councilor Daniels.
Thank you. Thank you. So I know you said that you would be doing the TAM training. How, I guess, so this is our first Maverick in town. How often would you say there are violations and how does your company handle them?
So violation, I mean, I guess I don't know for fact how often they are. They happen and that we handle them by the employee who does the violation. They're suspended for 5 days without pay. They have to pay the fine and go to the hearing. And then they have the retraining. And then if it happens another time, then the manager is the same process with that employee. The manager has a retraining, the whole store has a retraining. And we just try to have that conversation with everybody after that first one is, hey, are you checking IDs? How are you checking IDs? Right now, we're making sure that there's a report going around saying, this is how many times you've scanned the ID and this is how many times you've entered the manual birthday. And so they're tracking that and sending that to the stores. So that way we can see, hey, are the barcodes working on the back or are you typing it in? And if you're typing it in, are you typing just a random birthday all the time? Or are you actually looking at the ID and doing it? So they dig in like that and they get that information to pass down to us. So we know where to go with our stores. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, now we'll turn it over to anybody in the audience wishing to speak to this application. And since the audience is very limited, I'm not going to split it up between for and against. We'll just have first anybody present in council chambers who wishes to speak to this application, and then we'll go to Zoom. Is there anybody in council chambers who wishes to speak either in favor of or against this application? Does not appear that there is anybody, and so we'll go over to Zoom and see if anybody wishes to speak to this application, and if so, using the raise your hand feature on the Zoom website, or I always forget star whatever it is if you're on the phone, star 9 if you're on the phone. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom either, so we'll close the public hearing and turn it back over to council for discussion.
Okay, Council Daniel.
So council, this is gonna be the same concern I've brought up a couple of times when it is to me, this is more, I know it's a convenience store, so I know it's different than a liquor store, but this to me is a very different license than a restaurant license. And so when we think about how we need to have access for alcohol in our community, do we believe that we have enough carry out off-premise liquor, beer opportunities in our community? We are a small community. I know the need. I wish we would have had more desires answered on the thing. I know they didn't give them to you. I know that's not your fault. So I struggle with that, and I struggle with saying yes to this one. It's the same conversation I have every time. So I just will say it again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Daniel. Councilor Griego and then Councilor Hensley.
I guess when you put together a business like this, you try to find other ways of making it successful. And as people come through, they want a one-stop deal where you can put your gas, get your food, get your whatever you want, a pop or a beer. You know, it kind of fits just like hotel restaurant license, you know. When you have a restaurant like that, it almost goes hand in hand. And I don't see a problem with this. We appreciate the fact that Maverick came to our community, you know, and the monies, it's sales tax. We live off sales tax and the monies that they will generate for us. So if nobody has any question, I was gonna make a motion that we go ahead and approve this 4-minute malt beverage off-premise license for Maverick Inc. Is it 679? And also, I'm a businessman, a past businessman. So I know when you have a project like this and you want to get it going, you know, I want to waive the time that you got to go through it. So I'd rather make the motion right today.
I'll second.
Okay, are we okay with that, Attorney Suizo?
That's your standard practice is if you appear to have a clear-cut answer, then you can take your vote on the motion, and I will prepare draft findings consistent with that vote. Otherwise, what you have done in the now fairly distant past is to have, not hold the vote tonight, have me prepare draft findings going both ways, and then hold the vote after you've been able to review those. And typically that would be so that if any of you are on the fence, and I don't mean that you all have to agree, but if any of you are on the fence about how you might want to vote and want to see what draft findings might look like both ways, then you can do it that way.
Thank you, Mr. Sweezer. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Yes.
Just one clarification. The motion I'm making is that we waive what you just said. Right?
Yeah.
Well, I understood your motion to be your typical practice, which is you take the vote and I submit draft findings because you have to
Sure.
issue written findings.
Sure. Okay, just so we understand.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
I understood you to be doing what you've done for the last 3 or 4 years.
All right, thank you.
Good. All right. Motion second. No further discussion. Please start voting. Ms. Martinez?
The motion carried 5-1.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the last item on the agenda, council comments. Any comments I'll go ahead, Councilor Vihil.
Thank you, Mayor. I got two. First one is good luck to all congratulations to Councilor Woodard's son who competed at the state wrestling meet a couple weeks ago. And then as a freshman, he did really well. And then I want to congratulate and say good luck to the 16 Valley basketball teams that are playing in regionals this weekend. Alamosa, Centauri, all over the Valley. There's teams playing all over the state. And then I want to offer my condolences and my prayers to two pretty big members of our community who passed away just in the last 2 or 3 days, Dennis Lopez and Donna Woods. They were both very important figures in education and at the Catholic Church. So.
Thank you, Councilor Vihil. Thank you. Councilor Griego.
I had a constituent get hold of me and ask why we didn't have a financial statement in December. And also asked me to ask in January, compared from January last year to January this year, we have a $2 million surplus. And I said I would bring it up. I would announce it at council comment. So I've done my job.
Thank you, Councilor Griego. Let's see. Any other comments?
Mayor, I forgot to mention this under staff update. I apologize. I just wanted to do a reminder that we do have the work session next week on the short-term rentals. So since it's an off week, just wanted to do that reminder. So it's next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Heather, just, and I probably overlooked it, did we cover that letter situation with the county tonight?
Yes, that was on consent. So
Okay,
you can
good.
approve that grant now.
I just wanted to I had a note in my alarm reminded me. Okay, good deal. All righty. Okay. So I just would like to just thank everyone who showed up tonight and voiced their concerns and support. And thank council for your the way that we all handled this situation tonight and your feedback and professionalism. And thank you to the staff for preparing a very thorough presentation tonight so that the residents can see all the work and efforts that you have put into this effort. So thank you. No other business. This meeting is further adjourned. There you go.